This Saturday episode of New Politics was released on the 18th of July, 2026, and produced on the lands of the Wangal and Gadigal people.
Can artists still speak freely about their creative work? Or can they only speak until someone powerful makes an objection? The Jayson Gillham case might be over, but the battle over artistic freedom is only just beginning. I'm Eddie Djokovic.
I'm David Lewis. All of this is coming up in this big episode of New Politics.
And we've got an announcement about a new publication that we've just launched, and it's called the New Politics Quarterly. It's an analysis of the state of Australian politics at the moment and a review of the past 3 months. Now, it's available as an ebook and a PDF download. We'll be looking at providing it as an audiobook as well. You do get it as a subscriber, so subscribe now. It's just $5 per month, either through Patreon or Substack. And of course, this is another good way to support independent journalism.
Gillham is suing the orchestra over the termination of his contract after he performed a solo piece titled Witness at a Melbourne event in 2024, dedicating it to journalists killed in Gaza. The orchestra cancelled his scheduled performance at the town hall the following day, citing safety concerns after the controversy attracted international attention.
I'm standing firm in my belief in the artist's right to freedom of expression. This is a really landmark case for Australia, for artists, for independent contractors, for all workers, for everyone. And I also believe that it will be noticed internationally as well.
The federal court has ended musician Jayson Gillham's legal battle with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra with a verdict in favour of the MSO. But it's left a much bigger question hanging over Australia's arts sector and free speech. And this relates to a performance that Gillham gave a few years ago when he dedicated a composition that was written by Conor Donetto to all the Palestinian journalists that have been killed by Israel. Now, David, if no one said anything about it, nothing would have happened and we would not be talking about it today. We'd be talking about something else, like interest rate rises or something like that. But absolutely nothing is allowed to go through unpunished if it ever talks about Israel in a slightly negative way. So the question is, can artists still speak freely when their views become politically inconvenient to a specific group of people? And the judge in this case made it clear that this is a technical workplace law case issue, not a ruling on freedom of speech, which to me sounds like a whole pile of crap. This ruling is a direct attack on freedom of speech and freedom of political speech as well. But by accepting this idea that commercial reputation can justify cancelling an artist's performance, well, the question is who decides what that commercial reputation is and how that is being harmed. So we've got a case where if organisations can silence controversial opinions, even when they're not so controversial, whenever sponsors or donors or public image is at stake, artistic freedom becomes conditional on commercial acceptability, and that could mean absolutely anything at all. So this court case might have been settled in itself. Now, there is room for appeal as well, so that Jayson Gillham might actually appeal this, but that might be all over. But the debate over free expression in Australia's cultural institutions, as determined by specific lobby groups, I think that's only just begun.
As a musician, I took a bit of an interest in this case because he didn't say anything about the state of Israel. He didn't say anything about Jewish people. He'd be mad to. In the music industry, very few non-tolerant people make it because you're dealing with all kinds of people when you work in music. All he said was he'd like to dedicate this to the journalists who have been killed. And as far as I know, I don't think he even suggested that they were deliberately targeted or just journalists killed in a war zone. Now, we can draw our own inferences as to what he thought about that. And I suppose that's where the case was what was fought over. But it's this whole idea that music shouldn't be a political, or art shouldn't be a political statement. All music is political, all art is political, all literature, even something as dumb as I want to rock and roll all night and party every day is a political statement. It's about freedom and the right to not follow standard norms. The highly privileged guys of KISS are stating this, and good luck to them, their success. I don't begrudge them their success, what have you. It's just as political a statement as how can we sleep while our beds are burning, which is an overtly political song, Midnight Oil. Now, who would you rather listen to? That's up to you.
Why not both?
And why not both? It's harmless in a sense, and I know Gene Simmons is a very problematic character, but that's not for this podcast. Yeah, Katy Perry saying, all you kids who parked the car on Friday night and it's now Tuesday, isn't really singing to the kids of the same age who are parking the car and looking after the garage because they've got to work. It's aspirational, sure. Nobody wants to be the valet car park person in the context of that song. They want to be the kids going out and having a great time. That's a political statement. So to hear this thing that people say, oh, musicians shouldn't be political. They should be. For Jayson Gillham to make a one-sentence thing in an otherwise hour or so, 2-hour concert and to be punished. Now, I hope he appeals because I think it would bring I don't know, and I've never met Jayson. I play truck songs. He plays classical music. I hope that he can get some funding because what's going to stop an appeal, of course, is affordability. If it goes to the full bench of the High Court, that's SCs and barristers, and it's not cheap. Of course, it should be cheap. A genuine appeal should be free, I think, or very nominal costs.
Well, even minimal legal encounters, as we've experienced in the past, David, they do cost a little bit of money.
Yeah.
Say no more.
Say no more, yes. Hello to all our friends out there who are lawyers. And a lot of you do great work, don't get me wrong. So I was very disappointed to see that a musician couldn't make a statement on something really important. Yes, war zones are a risk. Yes, journalists get killed. But a bigger proportion of journalists have been killed in this conflict than in other conflicts. Maybe they were more foolhardy. Maybe the nature of this particular war meant that battle zones changed very quickly and unpredictably. Maybe there's another reason that I know some of you are already punching the screen saying, oh, come on.
But this case is more than just a dispute about this one performance. And as we've seen through the Royal Commission into Anti-Semitism, that's a different legal event that's going on at the moment, but there was a lot of material and opinion that was presented to this federal court and not really tested in the way that you'd normally expect. And one person from the MSO board, Farrell Meltzer, he said that he did not accept that a single Palestinian civilian had been deliberately killed by Israel Defence Forces. So I'm not sure how he thinks that at least 70,000 civilians in Gaza, maybe up to 680,000 people, not sure how he thinks they might have died or who actually killed them. But a lot of this material was offered up in the federal court, but not really tested in the way that you normally expect. And the court adjudication, it did actually declare that if Jayson Gillham had made a statement of support for Israel, he would have been sacked as well. And I think that anyone who would have listened to that case all across Australia would have had a good laugh about that and said, no, that's never happened before, and it would never happen if someone supported the state of Israel in a classical music environment or any sort of musical or theatrical performance. If they got up and said that we support the state of Israel or I support the state of Israel, that they would never be sacked. And if Jayson Gillham did get up on stage and said that he supports the Israel Defence Forces or dedicated the performance to all the journalists killed in Ukraine or any other conflict, well, he'd be on his 50th encore performance now. He probably would have been lauded by the MSO. He'd be their poster boy and all that sort of stuff. And the chair of the MSO, Edgar Meyer, he publicly condemned Hamas in 2023. That's his right to do that, if that's what he wants to do, whether it's right or wrong.
Hamas is a problematic organisation.
Oh, for sure. Well, he publicly condemned Hamas in 2023, but that's a political statement.
Of course it is.
That's obviously a political statement. Whether it's right or wrong, doesn't matter, but nothing at all happened to him. So to me, it's pretty obvious that Jayson Gillham had his concerts cancelled because he made a brief statement about journalists killed in Palestine, and that is the only reason. There's no other way of looking at this.
Yeah, and again, Hamas is part of one side of a conflict, okay? To criticise it, a musician can do that. Journalists are neutral, and I know that they're not neutral, but it's not as if it's a war against the Israeli Defense Force and journalists, and the journalists have entered into a battle. Same with medical, same with aid people. We've had a couple of Australians lost who were providing aid to people in need. It's really upsetting that it's come to this. Now, maybe the orchestra has to now put in, you will not make any verbal political statements for or against anybody. And that includes, I went to the UK and I had a lovely time there and I met the Prime Minister. Not allowed. I bought a Tesla car because I think Elon Musk is a great guy. Not allowed. Are they prepared to do that? None of this is necessarily my opinion, by the way. I'm just thinking.
Sure, but the world's going to end up being a pretty boring place if everything is excluded from commentary or being discussed or whatever the case might be. But the federal court did actually say in its ruling that it only applies to Jayson Gillham's case. But that's rubbish. This sets up a precedent, and many artists will see a much broader message here or broader issue. And sure, we had the Israel Folau case several years ago. He's not an entertainer; he's a sports person.
He's a sports guy.
But we had that case several years ago about homophobia and bigotry, and you can put pretty much anything that you want in a contract, but it has to abide by the law as they exist. And Israel Folau was sacked because he said offensive things about a large group of people. Jayson Gillham was sacked because of a specific group of people, and that's the extreme Zionists within the Jewish community. So it's a subset of a smaller community, took exception to his offering of support to journalists who had been killed in conflict. So the question has to be, well, who decides what's political or not? Do we have to go to court every time there's some sort of political commentary that's made? If they listen to our pro episodes today, we'd be in court every single week and we haven't got the money and the time to deal with all of that sort of stuff. But who's going to decide with all of this? There's been a lot of musicians and performers who have dedicated songs to the people of Ukraine. I don't personally have a problem with that. No. We also had Deborah Conway giving her support for Israel and Zionism during her performances. Now, I do have a problem with that, but that's a personal choice. You can do whatever you want on stage, but apparently that's all okay. But for support for anything to do with Palestine, that's not. So whatever the legal reasoning is, there is a practical effect to all of this. And it's not like every artist gets up and makes a political statement anyway. I don't want that. I just want to go to a performance and watch someone perform. But if it's a short 10-second statement or 20-second statement, which is what Jayson Gillham did, I'm okay with that, even if I don't agree with that. But those who would have been thinking about making a comment about a political issue, doesn't matter what it is, well, they'll probably decide to keep quiet about it rather than risk their careers.
I get the Melbourne Symphony or the Sydney Symphony or Adelaide. I get that they mightn't want party political statements. I'm getting up and I'm voting for Angus Taylor because I think he's a good bloke and he's going to be great for the arts.
David, I cannot imagine any artist getting up on stage and saying that, but I take your point.
Yeah. I picked the most outrageous thing I could think of. Johnny Ramone, of course, when the Ramones were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, said, "God bless President Bush and God bless our troops in Iraq," which was probably not the majority opinion at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But if a musician did that, you could see that our funding is dependent on government. We don't want to be seen to be favouring one side because governments change and what have you. So I can understand that. But to say, I don't know, I don't like poverty and I think we should give more money to government services that alleviate poverty, that's a political statement. I think we should raise the tax burden on people earning over $150,000. That's a political statement. Would the MSO or the SSO, or on and on we go, be prepared to accept those? Now you can do the whole blanket thing, but then do we look at pieces of music? The 1812 Overture, Tchaikovsky, it was a political statement. Stravinsky's Rite of Spring caused riots in the streets before it performed. A lot of the participants were in the orchestra, so they went out and rioted and went in and played the piece. Only in France, I think. So it's even Rumble, Link Wray's wonderful piece of rock and roll was an instrumental and it got banned because it was meant to stir up kids in rock and roll. So for the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra to start claiming, oh, no, there's no politics. There's no politics in music is a complete misunderstanding of what music is.
Oh, of course it is. But as you mentioned before, David, everything in this world is political, whether we like it or not. I think politics is defined as two people. Two people having a conversation, that can be political. But overall, I think the biggest test is whether Australia's cultural institutions, well, they really uphold this artistic freedom that they always go on about. And of course they don't. We've seen so many examples over the past few years where artists and performers and journalists have been sacked or banned or cancelled because they spoke up about Palestine. No other issue. It's always consistently about Palestine, or they created work that was influenced by the events in Palestine, or they might have had the flag of Palestine as part of their artwork, or they've worn their keffiyeh, or comment here and there about criticising the state of Israel. And a lot of people in creative industries do stand up on their principles, and that's your cachet if you're a particular type of artist or a musician or journalist. I'm not saying that everyone is or they need to, but that's your cachet pretty much. And it's obvious that you can talk about anything at all except for Palestine or say negative things about Israel. And we've got all of those peps within the art world, peps, progressive except Palestine. And we're not suggesting that just because you're a creative person or a creator that you automatically have to get up on stage and support the Palestinian cause or any cause at all. But if you do, you should not be punished and sacked for it. And that's exactly what's happening now.
Yeah. You mentioned Deborah Conway earlier. She's had a huge backlash against her views on Israel, and concert sales are down and what have you. I presume she's also had support from those who agree with her. But that goes back to the responsibility of free speech, which I mentioned earlier. You can have whatever opinion you want, but it's going to cost you in some way. Whether that cost is as simple as I was wrong and I had to change my mind, or whether it is you lose income and friends and support because you expressed an opinion that was not in line with what others should be. Good on her for standing up for what she believes in, but maybe she needs to rethink it. But where I was going with that is that I'd never say to her, you're not allowed to think that. She can think what she wants. And the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, I think there's going to be long-term implications from this that they haven't anticipated when Israeli policy changes.
Well, also Israel has a general election coming up before October this year, so there might be a change of government and there might be a change of policy there.
It unfortunately doesn't look like there will be a change of government, but stranger things have happened and patience is wearing thin, and Netanyahu is clearly only running to avoid going to jail, and there's a part of the electorate in Israel that is aware of that and wants to see him go to jail for crimes, or at least go to trial for crimes that they think he's committed. So, yeah, anything could happen, although the left in Israel isn't as united as it should be, and so we'll struggle to get the bloc going. But you never know.
That's it for this episode of New Politics. Thanks for listening in. And if you value independent journalism without the influence of corporate backing, join New Politics at newpolitics.com.au and support us directly. It's just $5 per month, and we always try to keep it very simple. If you like what we do, please send some support our way. It keeps our commitment to independent journalism ticking along. I'm Eddie Djokovic. Thanks for listening in, and it's goodbye to our listeners.
I'm David Lewis. We'll see you next time.